All right, folks, this one's a quick hitter. Part 2 of my interview with Josh Lloyd. This half, we go over the upcoming NBA draft. That's just a few hours away from us right now at the time of this show going out to the universe. And we get Josh's opinion on which players, if any, should be on your radar for fantasy purposes this coming year. Is it curmudgeon time? Or is it time to take a look at the youth movement? This is Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Besbris, at Dan Besbris on social media, at Old Man Squad over on Twitter as well if you want to follow the umbrella group. Also, please take a moment to like, rate, and subscribe no matter how you're taking in the show. I say it again, like, rate, and subscribe. But without further ado, you guys didn't come to hear me talk about that nonsense. You came to hear Josh talk about the draft. So here we go. Pivot now. Because originally I was going to ask you about the draft, and I want to make sure I get a chance to do that before I send you on your merry way. In your afternoon, my evening at recording time here. Tomorrow, by the way, that continues to confuse me however many years later. I'll make this one relatively quick and painless. Josh, I trust your brain. This draft confuses many, so it very much confuses me because, I don't do a ton of research on these young guys who now I'm just referring to as teenagers because I really think that's a funny way for me to talk about young players. It doesn't make me seem creepy at all. Do any of these guys strike you as sort of question half number one, good enough in year one to make a fantasy impact? And then maybe more importantly, second half of the question, outperform expectations? Because this last year with Wemby outperforming even the highest of hype expectations and Chet being a monster outperformer, I worry that people are going to start looking at young players and thinking, oh, this happens all the time, but it's somewhat uncommon that two rookies just blow away expectations in ADP like that. So I know one big question, but what's on your brain?
Well, Dan, first of all, I know that if there's one thing that I think about when I think about you, it's that you don't love thinking about young boys. So I understand that you're away from the draft area. Secondly, I think that the vast majority of fantasy people will not be stupid enough to think, well, it happened with Wemby, it'll happen again. Now, there's always going to be some sort of clown who suggests this. Well, it happened this year. Like, there's always going to be someone who says that. There's always the most, like, yeah, I'm sure you'll see it, like YouTube comments, like the insane YouTube comments that I get at times. Like, how does anyone think this? Oh, I guess you do. So you're the one, like the person who told me that this draft class has the potential to have the best point guard group of all time. I went, all right, like, unless you discount 30 other drafts, so I guess you're right. Or someone that told me that, the Knicks definitely paid, not enough because all those players won a championship in college together so they can do it in the NBA. That's also not how any of that works, but whatever. But there's always someone that's going to say that. But as a general rule, we're all smarter than that. We all know that, there's no Wemby, there's no Shed in this draft. And I do this analysis every year, Dan. I think the average for top, I think it's 120 fantasy rookies is like 3.7 per year. In a good draft, you get up to 5 or 6. In a bad one, you get 2. This is a bad one. We might get 1. Like, we might get 2 guys in the top 100. I hate this draft. Every player is really limited in certain areas. There's a lot of uncertainty. Like, there'll be guys who go at 2 or 3 that I could have at 15 or 25, or a guy that I could have at 6 who goes at 31. Like, it's all over the shop, and it's going to really depend on where a lot of these players end up. And realistically, the only sort of situation is, to me, like what happens in Washington. Like, if they take Alex Sarr, who claims that he's a 4, like, okay, good luck. Does that mean they're trading Kuzma? Because the opening there is at the 5, so I don't know what they're going to do there. Or if Donovan Clingan goes somewhere to play 25 minutes, then there's a little bit of fantasy value there. I don't think anyone will be taken in the top 50, so I don't think you have to worry about that level of expectation. I think you might get one player taken in the top 70. Like, if you go back to the Paulo Banchero draft 2 years ago, Paulo was picked in the top 70, but that's it. Like, no other rookie was, and that's considered way better than what this draft is. Going back to the LaMelo Ball, Anthony Edwards draft, I think one of those guys, maybe it was LaMelo, went in the 60s in that draft. Like, we generally have more restraint than I think that we do. But this one here, like, there is, unless we go Donovan Clingan's going somewhere playing 30 minutes a night, which he couldn't even do in college, I would I would put the over under of guys in the top 120 by the end of the year at like 1.5. I would think, meaning I don't think we need to touch majority of these players.
Is there any chance that because they seem so clunky and things are so muddied and nobody really knows what the hell's going on with this board, is there any far-fetched universe where we could actually see kind of like a reverse hype train on rookies for the first time that I can almost ever remember?
I think it's going to really depend on when you conduct a draft, because this happens. You'll see summer league where it's only the rookies playing, right? Or basically the rookies playing, so they'll look good against blokes who will never touch the NBA court. And then, so if that's what's in people's minds, we'll hear that. But then if we get to the preseason and these guys are barely playing as part of the starting group, or sort of there's no real clear rotation role there, then like that'll push them way down again as well. I just it's just going to depend. Like there are a couple of guys who translated really well stats wise. Number one of those is Sheppard, like some of the unbelievable stat translations. But like if he goes at 3 to Houston, he's not playing. Like he's playing 20 minutes a night, so we don't care. Yeah, Alex Sarr's was pretty good. Donovan Clingan's was pretty good, but if they're playing 22 minutes a night, like I don't care. Like these guys are going to need very clear starting roles. And like if Ricochet goes somewhere to the Hawks, would they even start him? Because DeAndre Hunter, Jalen Johnson are there. And if he does start, he doesn't have a great fantasy translation. Like there's just not anything that is super exciting here. And it's just going to really depend on where players land. And it's just probably like 3 guys. Like if Sheppard went to a team, like if he goes to San Antonio and they say, right, he's our starting point guard opening night, then yes, absolutely. He is in consideration for one of your last couple of picks, but it could also go terribly wrong. And it's just one of those classes where there is just the players aren't of a good enough caliber, I don't think, to demand a large enough role in year one to see that their below average stat translations mean that we need to get excited about it. There's just too many things pushing against it for me.
You're saying all the things that my brain always wants to yell, but I don't know how to convey it. Are you telling me that my initial strategy of just ignoring all of these jokers is finally going to work?
I think that this year, well, I think you are right in a respect of.
I mean, I'm kind of joking, but
that the reverse stuff might happen, is that everyone avoids them, and then there's no rookie taken until pick 100. Then I go, I'll take Alex Sarr at 100. Like who cares? Like what else am I doing with that pick? Like that's okay. But I think that I don't have a problem with grabbing a rookie at 70 or 75 and seeing what happens. I've got no concern with doing that. As in a general draft with a guy that we know is going to come in, you're the number one player, you're going to have usage, you're going to touch the ball. I'll deal with your percentages on the build of my team or whatever. But this year, I don't really see that. The only one will be maybe Alex Sarr in Washington. If that ends up happening, then I'll be like, all right, there could be 28, 29 minutes here, and maybe it's 15 and 7 with 1.6 blocks or something. Maybe that's all right. But like, I'm not going to get excited about it because I'm just so like not off this class. And people think that when you say you think it's a bad draft, there are plenty of NBA players in this draft, right? There are plenty of rotation players. There are plenty of guys who are solid players who will develop into starters. There's no one who appears to be a star, and definitely not someone who I think is going to take the league by storm in year one.
Is Bronny James going to be in the NBA this year? I had to do it.
Yes, 100%. Yep, he's definitely going to be in the NBA, Dan. He's going to be there. Whether he plays any minutes or not, I don't know. But there will be, I would say there is 0 chance that Bronny does not get a guaranteed contract in this draft. There's 0 chance.
Is that because he actually deserves one, or is it because of his dad?
I talked about this. It is both. I talked about this a little bit earlier on my show. So like, if he didn't have the Bronny James name, then we wouldn't get some of the outlandish, he should go in the top 5 or, the top 15, or he's in consideration in the first round. That would never happen. But also if he didn't have the Bronny James name and people were just evaluating him for who he is, people go, I can see a Patrick Beverley, DeAnthony Melton type of play here. That's great in the second round. That's every team wants a player like that. He's short, but he's long. He takes charges. He gets steals. Like the shooting was terrible, but it's so small sample size. Like everyone likes that sort of player, early mid-second round in majority of drafts. So it sort of works for and against him. And I think there's a lot of it going, you're only thinking about him because he's of his dad. But I think that if you scrub the name away, what he actually provides, I think is pretty useful for NBA teams at the right spot and in the right role, of course.
That is a damn level-headed take on Bronny James, Josh. That's a damn level.
I apologize. That doesn't belong in basketball discourse, does it?
No, it's way too reasonable. Way too damn reasonable. At redrock_bball, I promised that this fine gentleman and I would only take 20 to 25 minutes of his time, so I don't want to go over what my promises are. Plus, Josh, can we do this again in the pretty damn near future when we start to see how the board is shaking out, when we see where guys are landing? Free agency stuff is very close. I think we'll probably have a lot of stuff to cover at that point.
Yeah, definitely, Dan. We'll reconvene and we'll have a chat about stuff.
We certainly will. Josh Lloyd, of course, is the host of Locked On Fantasy Basketball. He is the lead fantasy basketball analyst at Basketball Monster. He has incredible power, and we are harnessing it here on the pod. You're an influential man. I don't know if you knew that.
I wish that was true, Dan. I don't think it is, but I wish it was true.
Josh, thank you so much, my man. I really appreciate it.
No worries.
This is a quick hitter, as promised. That was Josh Lloyd on the names to watch or not watch in the draft coming up tonight. Who should you draft on your fantasy team? Well, we kind of need to know where they're going to land, but as you just heard, there is no guaranteed pathway for these guys. There's a critical pitfall with almost every name in the draft, and the one that, I don't know if it slipped by, Reed Sheppard, in a good spot because of the efficiency. That was a name that Josh highlighted during that discussion, and actually kind of downplayed guys like Donovan Clingan because we don't know what his motor can handle. Alex Sarr because we don't know where he's going to end up and where the minutes are going to come from. Obviously, there's a little bit of upside there, but there is no guarantee in this upcoming draft that we're going to get a fantasy gem. So then it comes down to where they're getting drafted, and we really won't know that for at least a month. Yahoo leagues probably don't open until, I would think, earliest mid-late July. We got a little time left. And then, frankly, it's really more, towards the start of the season when you see what the ADPs really look like for these guys and whether or not it's worth taking a plunge on that. So thank you to Josh again, redrock_bball, the great Josh Lloyd, host of Locked On Fantasy Basketball and the lead fantasy basketball analyst over at Basketball Monster. We did that interview in one, 20 some odd minutes sitting last night. Initially, it was going to be a whole segment about this draft. And then the Mikal Bridges trade went down. And I thought, well, I don't think I can put these both in just one show. It makes almost no sense because I wanted to give my take on the Bridges trade, but I don't really have a take on the draft. So how do I split it up? It would have been weird and disjointed. So I cut it into two chunks. We had the Bridges trade show earlier. This one, a short show, just Josh on the draft. Hope you guys enjoyed that. I'm Dan Vespers for Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. Thank you all for tuning in. Please go hit that thumbs up button, whatever it is. Did a heart on Twitter, a thumbs up on YouTube, whatever it is. Follow on Spotify, subscribe on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube. Let's keep growing this thing little by little, stacking bricks, baby. Stacking bricks. Thanks to Josh for helping us stack a few bricks today. We'll talk to you guys again tomorrow. So long for now.